One thing that may become evident to you as you look at what an operation is and what operations managers is and what transformation process is that firms actually contain within them lots of little operations, lots of little transformations. You have a transformation process that fits within the concept and idea of things coming into the firm and things leaving the firm, but actually the firm itself is made up of a large number of operations. For example, at an airport, you will have, of course, the idea that you convert people into passengers and then they fly, but you'll also have a system in which people need to be sold tickets, which people will need to go through security, in which luggage will need to be loaded onto planes, in which planes will need to take off and land, etc. So they're all these themselves are operations. And there, of course, therefore, various different transformation processes going on, and we call this the process hierarchy. And the process hierarchy basically works under the principle that all macro operations, and a macro operation is a big operation that may cover an entire organization or company, are made up of many, many, in some cases hundreds, of micro operations. All these micro operations have inputs, but many of these inputs will not come from outside the firm or organization. They'll come from inside the firm or organization. And of course, each micro operation itself will have to produce some sort of output of a good or a service, which is the benefit of customers. But in this case, many of the customers will be internal. There'll be customers who are part of the internal supply chain. Of course, next week we'll be looking at the external supply chain. We also look later at the idea of how companies fit into supply chains. Well, of course, within an organization is a chain of operations where the outputs of one micro operation are the inputs to another micro operation to the benefit of customers internally and the long-term benefit of building up a final product or service, which is obviously to the benefit of external customers. Even micro operations may be broken down further into sections or groups of operations, into different parts of the process being done, part one of the process, part two of the process, part three of the process, or maybe they may be divided in which things can be put out to different groups who may be responsible for different aspects of the process, or may actually allow sections of the process to be run in parallel to speed up the process. So instead of actually just having a production line in which there's one car, several companies may have splits in the production line where different vehicles may go alongside each other down the production line. So we also have to look at things from the point of view of internal customers and internal suppliers. As has been noticed, the internal customers are those people in the organization that do not take things directly from external customers, okay, who do not actually collect supplies from external suppliers, that who for all their operation inputs are reliant on somebody else within your organization providing a quality, efficient product on time. Such as, for example, we require the library to provide access to decent books for you. We require timetabling to make sure that you have timetabling available. All these are internal suppliers. And of course, internal customers are also existing elsewhere. Internal suppliers then take the outputs of their operations, of their micro operations, and they pass these on to other customers. That's just the idea here might be for the way that, for instance, the accounting function here at the university processes people's payments and makes sure they're actually registered here at the university correctly and passes that information on to me so that we can teach them. So this is the kind of idea that we have internal suppliers to us. Of course, at this point, I am facing directly to an external customer, which would be yourselves or the people listening to this video. Most micro operations, unless they're ones at the borderline, will operate actually with both internal customers and internal suppliers. There are vast numbers of micro operations that are not in any way customer facing. But it is important to always think of your customer, whether they're internal or external, as a customer. That the whole point of the quality and the final effectiveness of the service you're providing or the product you're producing for the end customer will depend to a certain extent on how well you treat your internal customers. If you try and treat your internal customers differently to the way you would treat external customers, then your operation will be damaged and the quality and the effectiveness of the operation will be damaged, efficiency will be damaged, and the final product to serve customers will not be acceptable levels of quality. So the key thing to remember here It's always said before that not all managers may be called operations managers. Many managers who are not called operations managers are effectively managing operations. Many parts of the organization that will not think of themselves as operations are operations. Because things that we said, that's human resources has micro operations within it. Marketing has micro operations within it. Accounting and finance has micro operations within it. They all have inputs. For instance, they may have received the money that inputs, but also the information of how to handle that money. They may understand the rules of pricing, the rules of the accounting, the legal requirements. These are all information that is inputted to these things, and they need to provide an output that may not go to external to the organization, but must be useful to the other people internally. So all micro operations are similar to macro operations in that they have inputs transformed into outputs. In some ways, this is kind of like a collection of miniature organizations. It is almost fractal in the way it operates, in that the small, as you zoom in on things, you see multiple similar looking models of as you have when you look at the big picture. Each function, of course, has to have its specialist knowledge, its technical knowledge, but this is only the kind of the information part of the operations input. The technical knowledge may vary, but it is still information, it is still input through the same way into the transformation process as we've seen before. So every manager in a micro operation who is actually managing resources, who is managing some sort of transformation function, is in reality an operations manager. It is part of the role that everybody undertakes. That is why it is so important for you, whatever you find yourself doing, that you have an understanding of operations, because you'll find what you do is an element of operations manager. So under this circumstance, we have to look at these different meanings of operations, and we kind of differentiate between the two to understand what we're talking about, to make it clear and for you to understand where it is we're going with this. So there is operations of function, and this is the operations part that deals with the external customers and external suppliers and produces the products and service that are required, that are the core of the organization, for which the organization is publicly known. And there's operations of activity, and operations of activity is processing of resources that can be carried out by anybody within the organization to produce any type of product and service for internal and external customers. And even the hardest, most tangible products, such as crude oil, may well look like it is a pure product to an external customer, but there will be plenty of internal information. I can show you, as someone has designed an oil refinery and the function of an oil refinery, that there's an awful lot of process information required as to the changes and the automation that's going on, and the flow of the oil, and the dealing of the oil, and the cracking of the oil to make the various products to come out of it. And all this information, and safety information, and health information, environmental information, is being processed all the time. And there may be no knowledge of this arriving at the external customer. The external customer sees dirty black oil go in and sees petrol come out at the other end, and it may to them just be a pure product, but there's a huge amount of service information going on within the crude oil processing refinery.